Hi everybody, it's Deanna, and we are about to go live here in about 30 seconds. So, I got my mouse hidden down here, I need to fix that. We're just going to wait a minute here till everyone finds us, and then we'll get started. So if you're watching the replay, just bear with us while we wait for all the technical things to happen. I see some people showing up. Okay, good. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hi Lane, thank you for sharing the video. I really want to talk to you a little bit differently tonight than what we do on our normal Sunday night Magic Beans event, because I just went through something that I think eventually is probably going to happen to most of us. And I want to make sure that the lessons that I learned from that experience are passed on to you, and that hopefully you will be prepared when such a thing happens in your life. I would love for you to share this video. I feel like it's going to be a very, very important one. And there's a way to do that just at the bottom of your screen. I'd also love for you to give me a lot of your feedback. I think that this might be a little bit of a difficult story for me to tell. And so if I can get your comments and your little emoticons while I'm talking, I think that'll really help. And also just maybe give me a little shout out. Let me know who you are, where you're from. Hey, Anne. That way we can all kind of see who's here. So if you don't know me, my name is Deanna Nichols. I'm a Blue Diamond Wellness Advocate with doTERRA Essential Oils. And we have a weekly event called Essential Oils Are Not Magic Beans. And the reason we call it that is because essential oils are a very important part of your wellness regimen. Hey, Kathy. But they are not the be-all and end-all. There's lots of things that we should be doing to have a healthy lifestyle, including healthy nutrition, watching the products that we use to clean with, the products that we use on our face, on our skin, on our babies, just lots of things. The air we breathe, the water we drink. Hey, Jenny. Hey, Carol. And Lane in Jacksonville. Got lots of Jacksonvillians here. But there are a lot of other things that we need to do. And one of those things is at some point in your life, you're going to need medical care. You're going to probably need emergency medical care. And it is important, and it can be life-saving. And I had an experience where a family member was just needed some serious emergency medical care, and it absolutely saved his life. But I want to tell you what happened, because I think that it's super important that you learn from this. So basically, my father, 11 days ago, he had a massive heart attack. He was alone when it happened, and so he ended up being life flighted to a different hospital. He was nowhere near where he lived. He was like 3 hours away. And by the time the rest of us heard about it, he had already been alone for many hours. He had already been resuscitated 3 times. And so basically, his heart stopped beating. He stopped breathing 3 times. And he was a major candidate for emergency bypass surgery. And so I immediately got in my car and started driving from Knoxville, Tennessee to Akron, Ohio, where my dad was. And I have some family members who live right near my mom. So they came and they took my mom to the hospital, which was about a 3-hour drive. And there was another family member had to fly in. We were all heading there because they told us that my dad probably wasn't going to make it. We needed to get there as soon as possible. So I'm leaving for the hospital, and like any person who understands the power of essential oils, I totally brought my oils with me. And I had all these plans that I was going to use the oils on my dad when I got there. By the time I got there, my dad had already come out of bypass surgery. And thank you, Avis. I'm grateful too. Hi, somebody from Texas. And so when I walked into that cardiac ICU room, I realized I was experiencing something I'd never seen before. Now, I have taught thousands and thousands, like over 10,000 families, how to use essential oils for their wellness. I know that they can be used in really big situations. They can be used in really small situations. They don't replace medicine, obviously. There would have been In fact, there were probably dozens of people, medical people, who saved my father's life. From the people who were in the hospital that recognized he had the heart attack, because he didn't actually call 911 because he had a heart attack. He fell, and someone in the hospital recognized he was having a heart attack. Then there were people on a helicopter who saved his life, including the pilot, including the people who resuscitated him 2 times on the way to the hospital. There was a vascular surgeon who performed his surgery. There were amazing nurses, techs, just all kinds of people, ambulance drivers, 911 dispatchers. All these people contributed to my dad being alive. Hey, Heather. And so when I got there, I mean, I know how to use essential oils, and I've used them in just about every situation. If you know my story, I was very ill when I began to use oils, and so I have a lot of personal experience, and because of working with families all over the world, I've dealt with just about everything. And I've had people ask me before, what should I do when somebody is in the hospital and they're in like ICU? And I always say, use the oils. Definitely use the oils. And they're always nervous about using the oils, like, am I allowed to? What do I do? And when I got into that room and saw my father, he was in this room, and there was literally probably only enough room for like one person to be in that room because of all the equipment he was hooked up to. He was intubated. He had another tube going down into his stomach. He had a tube coming out of his chest. He had IVs hooked up. He had a central line. He had stuff coming out of every one of his veins in his body, every major vein. And then he had a pump that was pumping his heart for him. That was in his groin area and his thigh. And so really, even to touch my dad, the only place I could touch him was like a little bit on his head, a tiny area on his hand that wasn't covered by some kind of equipment, and then like just his feet. And when I walked in there, I realized that there were so many medications going into my father, and that if any one of them was changed just a little bit, it could affect like 5 or 6 more. And although I know that the oils are something that doesn't manipulate the body, it helps the body to go in balance, I didn't want to use a whole lot of different things, because I felt like he was in total medical care right there. I mean, they knew what they were doing. They handle this situation all the time. They have a process they use, and I felt like it wasn't my place to disrupt that. So the only thing that I could think to do was, they had kind of indicated that my father, it was very unlikely that he was going to make it. The only thing I could think to do was get some frankincense on him. So I put a little frankincense on him, just on like the areas of his head or feet where he could be touched. And honestly, I've had multiple friends that I've worked with that have had similar situations where they've had a loved one that was in very critical condition, and they were told they didn't have a lot of any hope or very little hope of recovery, and they saw a major turnaround with just using frankincense. I think the reason for that is multiple. Sorry, I keep clearing my throat. I think frankincense we kind of call it a super oil because it does so many things. It's very powerful for the brain. It's very powerful for really all of the tissue in the body. It's also got a lot of emotional benefits. Whenever you use frankincense, it helps you with like your relationship between you and God. It also has an important relationship with father and child. I was thinking about all those things when I chose frankincense. It also is a fairly mild smelling oil. And I know that in ICU, there's a lot more rules about what can be used in there, because there's just absolutely critical patients in there. And so I didn't want to be like I didn't want to create any kind of confrontation. Everything that was being done for my father was the most important thing, and they needed to be able to do their job without any kind of drama or confrontation. But I put frankincense on him, and then we were told that we could not come in the room anymore. We couldn't touch my dad. We couldn't talk to my dad because he was so critical and so precarious that he couldn't like move at all. And whenever he would hear a familiar voice, he would get agitated and want to try to move and talk. And so they needed to keep him extremely heavily sedated, and they needed to keep us out of the room. Later, I realized there was a lot of activity going on in his room, because I couldn't stay away. I mean, I would just kind of wander down the hall just to be near him. I felt like he could feel that we were near him. And I asked the doctor what was going on because I saw a lot of people in his room having like doing something, and that's usually not a good sign when like all the doctors and all the nurses are in the one room. It's usually not a good sign. And he told me, he said, your dad's getting worse. He's not doing well, and it is not looking good. And there's really not anything else we can do medically. Like there's nowhere else to put any medicine in him. Like we're at maxed out on everything, and his blood pressure is not staying up. I remember, I believe it was something like 40 something over 20 something blood pressure, and his heart rates were doing crazy stuff, and that was affecting his blood pressure as well. He was losing a lot of blood. His hemoglobin was very low. There was just nothing working in his favor at all. And at that point, I honestly gave up. I felt like he was dying, and all I wanted to do was just like talk to my dad. I had nothing about the oils was in my head at all. So we're in the waiting room, and the only thing I could think to do with the oils was to put them on myself and put them on my mom and other family members that were in the waiting room. And whenever we could, they said we could walk in the room as long as we didn't touch him or talk to him. So we would put frankincense in our hair and on our clothes and just be a diffuser in the room. And I would give my mom Aroma Touch hand massages. I would use oils like Peace and Console on her. I would rub them in her neck. I just was trying to do everything I could to keep her together. And then sometime in the wee hours of the morning, it hit me that if this was any other situation, I would be telling the person, if they already said like there's nothing really else they can do medically, I have stuff that works really well in the body, and it works in all kinds of situations. I've had like miraculous things happen in my own life with the oils. Why am I not using them in this situation? And so what I did is I would just take the frankincense and put it in my hand, and I would just walk in there, and I asked if I could just touch him and not say anything, and she said, yeah, you can touch him. So every 60 to 90 minutes I would go in his room and I would put frankincense on his head. I would just talk to him and touch his head and say, I love you. In my heart, I would say, I love you, Dad, I'm here. I couldn't talk to him. And then I would leave. And I stayed up the whole night. I would just do that every 60 to 90 minutes. I fell asleep in my chair. Like my whole family was asleep in the waiting room, and I fell asleep in the chair. I don't know what time, sometime in the morning. And as our nurse was coming to the end of her shift, after her shift was over, she came in to tell us that miraculously my dad's numbers had all stabilized, and that although he was still very highly critical, that he was no longer declining, and that she felt like he had turned a corner because he wasn't losing more, like he wasn't losing any ground. His blood pressures weren't dropping more, his rhythms weren't fluctuating more, his hemoglobin levels weren't dropping. And so I just strongly believe that the frankincense was what made the difference. So I obviously know that he would have never made it without the care of the medical professionals there. There's no possible way. However, I feel like when they reached the end of everything that they could do, the frankincense was able to come in. And so I called somebody in doTERRA that I really respect, that has a lot more knowledge than I do, and I just was talking to her, and she said, Deanna, the reason why essential oils are critical in these types of situations is because they give the body new information. They give the body new information. You're introducing new information to the body in through the power of these oils. They have so many chemical constituents in them, and they're so extremely powerful. And they talk to your cells. They talk to your body's cells. And so I feel like his body was able to use that new information to begin to heal. And so after that happened, I enlisted the help of my family, and we all decided, they said that we could come in pairs. Yeah, in groups of 3. into his room, and we kind of set a time for like every 90 minutes we were going to go in his room in groups of 3, and one of us would always have the frankincense in our palm, and we would just make sure we got it on my dad. We never asked permission to do it. We just did it because we could see that it was helping. And so we all were on board with the plan, and we all did that. And then when we were allowed to begin speaking to my dad and touching him more, I would go in there and I would talk to him, and I would say, Dad, you have to tell your heart to beat. You have to tell it to beat. You have to fight, like we're all here. And I would just tell him, what I wanted him to do. And I think that touch and voices of people that you love, and when you combine the power of touch with the power of these essential oils, it's amazing what can happen. I mean, we were watching him completely turn around right before our eyes. I mean, the doctor, when I saw him next, he was very stunned at how much my father had improved. And that's when that's when my mom actually told him about the essential oils. And we asked permission to diffuse oils in his room. I asked permission because it was the ICU. I've never had to have permission to diffuse essential oils in a hospital room ever. I just have always done it, and it's never been an issue ever, because it's ICU and they have a lot of strict policies in there. And I wanted to let them know what I was doing. And so, they said that they weren't sure, but if I could, find out what the hospital's policy was and try to work with it, that it would be okay by him, the doctor, to do it. And he said we should absolutely continue to use the oils topically as much as we wanted. And at that point, I decided that we needed to start using more oils. Things were not so critical, and he wasn't on so many medicines at that point that I didn't want to like mess with any of that. And the fact that the cardiologist knew about it and was cool with it made me feel more confident at that point. And so I began to use oils that I thought would help his body, give his body what it needed to repair and start to heal, which was first it was just about survival, and then it was more about healing. And so that's when I began to use some of the most important oils that I think everybody would want to know about in that situation. So the first thing that I did, we of course continued the frankincense, and then I used Immortelle. So Immortelle is my favorite oil for tissue. If you think about it, my dad had chest wounds. He took a fall, a really bad fall, so he had a really bad hip and leg wound. He had wounds in his feet from different medical equipment, in his legs. He had to have blood vessels and stuff removed or arteries or whatever, to do his operation. So he had wounds in the other leg as well. And so I just realized that the oils that are in Immortelle are very, very important for tissue repair. And so we put the Immortelle in a spray bottle, and we added fractionated coconut oil, and we would just spray it. My mom would apply it to like around, in a wide area around his wounds, so we weren't like touching his wounds. And then she would put it on his feet as well, and we did that one. And we also began to do black pepper, and honestly, that was mostly because my mentor told me that this was a really important oil for his situation because of, we thought he may have some nerve issues going on because of his leg injury. He had a leg that was like rock hard. When you would touch it, it was rock hard, and that's the one where he fell. So we weren't exactly sure. They didn't really know what was wrong with his leg at that point, and he couldn't talk to us because he was intubated and barely conscious most of the time. It's really great for circulation issues as well. So obviously with a heart situation, they were saying that they were giving him lots of blood transfusions, but they don't know where the blood was actually going, and there wasn't enough blood like to pump through his system. And they thought that maybe some organs were holding on to the blood that they were transfusing, but that was a real constant issue, was that his hemoglobin levels would stay up. So I wanted to make sure he was getting proper circulation. Normally in that situation, I would use something like Cypress for that. But in this particular situation, I went and was looking at the medications he was on, and they had him on vasoconstrictors. They had him on heart rhythm medications. These are all like really serious medications. And at that point, I felt like it's not like he was taking like a prescription medication for a chronic condition. He was like in critical care in the ICU, and he was on IVs of these medications for a reason. And so I didn't want to do anything that was too drastically related to what his medications were doing. So I was trying to stick with things that were great for overall body system. So that's why we kind of chose black pepper instead of maybe cypress or even AromaTouch at that point. I'm trying to think, sorry. So we didn't use anything for heart rhythms, even though heart rhythms was an issue, because again, he was on really serious medications for heart issues. So we didn't do anything like that. The other one we used was DDR Prime, and we took the oil and put it in a roller bottle, just straight. We didn't dilute it. And we were putting that on his feet every time as well. DDR is really important for nerve repair. It's really important at the cellular level, that he's having healthy cells regenerate. It's just a powerful, like, heavy hitter type oil. And so we were putting that on him every single time. So we were doing frankincense, immortelle, black pepper, and DDR were the main ones that we were doing. As he started to get a little bit better, then we went into the AromaTouch oil. And that's because, again, he had a lot of issues with nerves. When he was extubated and he could communicate, he let us know that he could not feel or move one of his feet. So we really wanted to do things that were helping with the nerves. So we started using the AromaTouch. There's cypress in there, but it's not straight cypress, you know? So it's a little bit different than using plain cypress. I didn't feel like that was the best option at that point. And then he was on a lot of blood thinners too. And so even though, like, if you're taking blood thinners, like taking pills for keeping your blood thin because you have some sort of condition, it's okay to cautiously use oils like Deep Blue and Wintergreen and Helichrysum. When you're in a situation where you're literally having IVs of this stuff pumped in you and you've just had your whole chest opened up, that's not really the time to be using additional things that help the body to thin the blood, because you're using artificial means to do that, and so you don't want to also be using natural things at the same time. Once he was much more stable and his hemoglobin levels were staying at the right levels, then I began to use Helichrysum on that leg that was injured. And then as he started to get better and closer to actually getting moved to a regular room, that is when we started to have things happen, like his appetite. He didn't have an appetite. He needed to be eating and didn't have an appetite. He wasn't drinking fluids. So of course, one of the first things we did was we added lemon oil to, I bought him like a stainless steel cup down in the gift shop and got a stainless steel straw, and we would put his water in there and I would add lemon to it, and he loved it. And it's like, it was funny because before this happened, we would try to get him to drink citrus oil in his water and he was kind of like, eh, but he's like, that is so delicious. And I just feel like his body at that point, like, just knew that it needed that. And so they kept telling him that, he needed like stool softeners and all this stuff. And he's like, no, I don't need that. I've got, I'm drinking the lemon in my water. So he was able to turn down some things at that point that were by mouth because he had the oils. What was really cool is a couple of days ago, he started to get feeling back in that foot, that he couldn't feel anybody touching him or poking him or moving his foot. And he started to have some soreness, which means he could feel it. And I believe that has a lot to do with the fact that we were using a lot of the oils that help with nerves, like the AromaTouch oil, the Helichrysum, the Immortelle, the frankincense. All of it's great for nerves. And, we really were diligent about putting the oils on him as often as we could, at least every, 3 to 4 hours while he was, stable. When he was in stable condition, we started doing that. So in critical condition, we just did frankincense. That's literally all we did. And then we sort of moved to the 4 oils I told you. And then we kind of added more things into his regimen. The other thing I know is that there's a lot of emotional stuff that goes on when the person wakes up and realizes what has happened to them. They've been through massive trauma. They've had their chest cut open. They can't really move and can't really talk and just a lot of things. And so we began to look at the emotional oils as well. And we really landed for him on using the oil Motivate. And the reason we chose Motivate is because he really liked the smell. So I let him smell a couple and he really liked that smell. He also, we found out that he had a nerve injury at the L4, L5, which is like the lumbar spine. And that's the section of the body where orange oils with an orange label are really, really effective. And so we felt like that would be a great oil for him emotionally. And so what began to happen in there was they decided that they did not want us to diffuse at all. And so we were not able to use the diffuser, but he was having some issues with when he would fall asleep. He was on heavy pain medication. So when he would fall asleep, you could see on the monitors that he would stop breathing, like sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is bad, you guys. If you're one of those people who's like snores heavily at night, if you wake up really tired in the morning or high blood pressure in the morning, you have any signs of sleep apnea, I just want to tell you, go get a sleep study done and get yourself a CPAP mask if that's what you're supposed to have, because that just sleep apnea alone can kill you. It's serious. Like young, otherwise healthy people can die in their sleep because they are, didn't stop breathing, or it can cause you to have a heart attack. So just that by itself is a reason to get tested. So I'm just putting a commercial out there that's not something to mess around. It's not just like, oh, I'm just a snorer. I was watching him and this man just like, basically died 4 times and just had heart surgery, and he's like kept stopping breathing while he was sleeping. I'm like, this isn't good. And so I got the Breathe oil out. He was literally, we watched on the monitor his oxygenation level, which, you want it to be like 100%, but I think like 94 is okay. He was dropping down to like the mid 80s, and he was like, the line was going totally flat on his breathing. And I went and put Breathe on his feet, and then I could not have a diffuser in there. So I took some tissues like that you blow your nose with, and I put Breathe on the tissues, and he had a little fan in his room because he gets really hot and he was getting really hot. So they gave him a fan, and I took the little tissue of Breathe and I slid it like right underneath the fan. So the fan was kind of like blowing right across it. And in just a couple of minutes, his oxygen saturation went way back up in the 90s again. And so, it was just really cool. Like I knew that Breathe worked that way, but it was really cool to see like scientific evidence, like, visible evidence on the monitors that it was working and helping him. So then we made that part of our regimen, is that we would put the oils before he would go to sleep. We would do that, and we would put little tissues throughout the room. And once they knew that we were using more oils in the room, they had us to where he had a glass sliding door so they could still see him. The nurses could see him, but that it would kind of contain the smells a little bit so that it wasn't disturbing other patients. And of course, in regular hospital rooms, you can always close your door, but in critical care, they want to have eyeballs on you at all times. So they have a glass door, and we would close that and keep the oils contained in there so it didn't bother anybody. And there was one nurse that had some issues, but once she realized like we were going to use the oils and she just needed to get over it, then it was fine. And so it would just helped. I think one of the most important things to know is like, just because you're in a medical situation doesn't mean that you need to throw the oils out the window. It's not too late. And the reason I know that people will do that is because I literally almost did that. I was like, whoa, this is way out of my league now. Like, I'm pretty comfortable in some pretty murky medical waters because I've been through them. But at this particular point, I was like, I guess I'm done with the oils here. Like, I shouldn't be using the oils. And so if I, who am very supremely confident about using oils in medical situations, was feeling that way, I know that you guys are probably going to feel that way even in a less serious situation. And I want you to know the oils can make a huge difference. If nothing else, they were keeping me going, keeping my hope alive, keeping my family's hope alive, keeping us calm and steadfast in the midst of one of the most traumatic situations, if not the most traumatic situation I've ever been in. But also, I feel like it was a way for me to communicate and connect with my father. I really felt like after being up with him that whole night, that night where it was like, this is the night, that he's probably going to die if he's not going to make it. I started to feel like pressure and pain in my own chest. And if I wasn't like eyeballs on my dad, I would start to feel like I need to go be in the room with him. I just felt super connected. And I think that connection to me, and as it progressed to the rest of my family, like that connection to the rest of our family, frankincense is the oil of connection between father and child. It's also a connection, God the Father and his child. And we were like really praying, like serious prayers for miracles for my dad. And that's really what it was going to take at that point, was a miracle. And so I feel like at the very least, the emotional benefits alone were huge. And we know that emotions pretty much control the outcome of everything. There's emotions at the root of everything. Even when you're, mostly unconscious or whatever, you still can sense emotion at that point. You're still in some state of consciousness where you can hear and feel and know things that are going on at some level. And so I just feel like the frankincense was a huge game changer. And I want you guys to know that it's very important when we have these videos, and it's very important when it's very important for you to be a wellness advocate with doTERRA. Get your own wholesale account with doTERRA. If you're buying oils, stop it, because you're missing the education. This education is great and it's free and it's open to everybody. I don't care what team they're on and all that. I want people to learn. That's why I do this, okay? Because it's important for everyone to learn this information. But when you're part of like a team, like if you're part of my team, we have members only Facebook groups where you can go and ask questions, and you're going to get our support. Like if you're going through this, we can say like, hey, go try this and go do this. And you miss all of that when you're just buying oils from somebody. You're not going to get that support. And so it is very important that you get an account, and that you get an account with somebody that you know is going to help educate you and help plug you into your team. They're not just going to try to keep you in a bubble somewhere. Like they're going to make sure that you know who your upline is. Because, as you go upline, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, if you have an active upline who's doing events like this, who's out teaching classes, who's constantly enrolling people, they're learning and they're attending like convention and stuff. They're learning how to use these oils in ways that you don't understand. And it's going to come down at some point in your life where it is the difference. The oils will make the difference if you know how to use them. I see people every day who are dealing with like allergy issues, and their kids are getting scratchy throats, and they don't know how to use their oils. Do you think they're going to use an oil in this kind of situation? They have no clue what the power of the oils do. And honestly, I encountered a couple of medical professionals who told me that the oils couldn't be used in this situation, that it was too dangerous. You're going to contaminate his wounds. Like they had no idea what essential oils were and how they worked. And if I didn't know that I know what they are and what they do, I would back way off. But it was important that I continue, and I knew it was helping my dad, especially when I knew it was helping him. There's nobody that was going to stop me from using the oils. Nobody. And I did have to go to the hospital because I did have some friction with one of the employees there on the floor, and I did have to go and get more advocacy and to fight for my right. But it helped that I was educated, that I knew where to find the science on PubMed. I knew where to find it, so I could show those scientific references to state my case. But I think the other reason I wanted you to know about this story is because don't give up. Don't give up. I hope that there's somebody in your family, and maybe it'll be you. I hope there's somebody in your family that whenever there's a medical situation, they know, bring your oils with you. Like you get a call to go to the hospital, bring your oil bag. I mean, that's like basic. Bring your oil bag, and that they'll use it, and that they'll fight for your right to get oils even if you can't speak. I will be that person for my family, and I know that my husband will be that person for me because he's learned and he's educated. My goal is to have at least one person in every family that is that person that knows that they know that these are important to use, that they're safe to use, that you have the right to use these in a hospital setting, which oils to use, where to go to get more information and more help when you don't know what to do in a critical situation like this. I'm 3,000. So I just wanted to share my story with you because if you ask my dad's surgeon and you ask the nurses that were with him during those most critical times, and you ask my family members who never left his side for those first 48 hours, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the oils made a difference in my dad's turning around and recovering from this situation. No question. There's no question. So I want you to have oils. I want you to have education, and I want you to have faith and confidence. And so how you do that is you get your own doTERRA membership. You need to find a person that will enroll you or sponsor you in doTERRA. to get a membership that is going to make sure that you know how to use your oils. They're not just there to like do like a one-hit wonder where they're just trying to sign you up and get a little cash in their pocket. You want somebody, and if they invited you to come watch this video, it's probably them. It probably is. If they've shared oils with you, it likely is them. But ask them, what education opportunities do you have? And then ask them how to get your own wholesale membership. doTERRA will give you a free wholesale membership if you choose a starter kit. I don't leave home without at least the basic top 10 oils. I put a link in the title of this video where you can go look at the starter kits for yourself, choose one that fits the size of your budget, and if you have a lot of medical stuff, you may want to look at one of the bigger kits so that like you can have this whole big thing. And I'm so glad that I had stuff that's not in the basic kits. Like I had Immortelle, I had black pepper, you know, AromaTouch, things that aren't in the basic kit when there was an emergency situation. So take a look at those kits and then contact the person that you want to be your enroller and ask them what education that they have available, what support do they have, so that you can continue to learn and be prepared when things happen in the lives of your family. I want to mention Immortelle because this has always been a game changer in big, heavy, serious situations, and you can get it for free. It's like a $92 bottle of essential oil. You can get it for free for like 4.5 more days in June when you choose a starter kit like the Home Essentials kit or larger, or family wellness kit or larger, so 200 points or more. You're going to automatically get this for free. If you don't have this in your home, I don't leave my house without this oil. I know what this can do. I know what's in it. I've used it in emergency situations multiple times, including this one. And so please make sure you have this oil in your arsenal, and you can get it for free. That's the best time ever to get it. So you're going to contact the person that invited you to watch this video and shared their oils with you, and ask them what kind of support they have if you choose them as your enroller. Once you have an enroller, you just need to choose your starter kit, and they'll help you get that set up. And then if you do it by the end of June, you're going to get the Immortelle for free. I hope you learned something from my story. I hope you'll share this video with others. I hope it was very clear that oils do not take the place of medicine and emergency medical care. And I think that you will note from my story that I had a vascular surgeon that was totally comfortable and on board with what we were doing, and that I am a trained professional in essential oils. And so all of those things you need to take into consideration when making any kind of decisions about somebody in critical care. If you have any questions or anything, please comment or send me a message, and I'll try to get back with you as soon as I can. But the most important thing I want you to take away is be prepared, be confident, be educated, and be open to the power of doTERRA essential oils, really pure and potent essential oils. And don't be afraid to use them, because it can make all the difference. Thank you for all your prayers and your support over the past week and a half. My family has been so blessed by so many of you, some of you that we've never even met before, that showed up to, you know, give us food and money and support and prayer during some of the most difficult days in this. And my dad's not done yet. He's got several weeks of recovery, and he will still be using the oils throughout that time. In fact, when he was extubated, the first thing he said to me was, "Can you please put some oils on me?" And so he knew, even as sick as he was, he knew that that's what he needed. And I loved hearing that. And I said, "Of course, Dad, definitely, I think I can do that." So anyway, I'm just grateful for these gifts, and I'm grateful for all of you. And I want to be here for your family and help you to be prepared if you're ever in a situation like that. Thanks for being here. Have a great night. Shine on.